welcome to a very special episode of the MetalWeen podcast. And today we will be talking about probably one of my favorite musical artists of all time, and that's the godfather of shock rock, Alice Cooper. So that's going to be very exciting. But first, I'm going to go ahead and get the shout-outs out of the way. Going to go ahead and give a couple shout-outs to it's just some of my favorite things in the world. And the first shout-out goes out to Chucky's Playground, of course. We're doing some great talking about some great stuff. And today, actually, at the time of recording this today, it'll be out tomorrow, hopefully. But today we were talking about Tiffany Valentine actually brought up the revelation that Tiffany's maiden name before she married Chucky was Valentine. And I'd always kind of heard that rumor, but I was never really sure if it was actually true. But it's great that we have confirmation. Don Mancini himself confirmed it, and it was in one of the newspaper clippings, and it's pretty interesting. So those are the type of talks that we have about Chucky's Playground. It's just a great place to be. So if you haven't joined up, what are you waiting for? Join up. We're getting new members, every few days, and it's just a great place to be. I really can't say enough good things about it. It's just awesome. It's just an awesome place to be. So come on and sign up. And then another shout goes out to my two best friends ever. Forever, really. Best friends forever. Spanky and G, Movie Mayhem. They just came out with a new episode. And I'm recording this the day before I put this up. So a couple hours ago, they had just released a new episode of Movie Mayhem, now on Mondays. And they did it on Annabelle, which is pretty interesting. I haven't seen Annabelle yet, and I probably won't go see it in theaters. Like, it really does not seem like my type of movie that I'm going to go see. Like, I haven't been to the theater in like a really long time, Like, I think the last time I went to the theater, I went to go see Ted from Seth MacFarlane, and I really liked that movie. So that was a good experience. And before that, I went to go see Toy Story 3. And before that, trying to think, Toy Story. No, I always said that. Simpsons movie. I went to go see Simpsons movie in the theater, and that was probably my favorite movie that I've ever seen in the theater. And I went to go see Meet the Robinsons, Cars, Chicken Little, stuff like that. And I also saw Sam Raimi's first two Spider-Man films in the theater, so that was really cool. And my mom tells me that the first movie I went to go see in theaters was Elmo and Grouchland. I have no recollection of that at all, but apparently I did. So, yeah, I recently watched that movie, and it doesn't hold up quite as well as you'd think it would. In fact, I'm not sure if it was even that great to begin with. But, yeah, anyway, I mean, I rarely go to the theater nowadays. It's just, I don't know, I don't really feel bothered to go to the theater, really. And I much prefer watching movies in the comfort of my own home, by myself, where people don't talk or on their cell phones or something like that, just to watch it alone, and that's just a great feeling. And I'm actually the next time I'm going to go to the theater is actually this month, actually. And in I believe like next week, actually, I'm going to go try and see Riff Trax Anaconda. Riff Trax is doing a live riff of Anaconda, and they're going to be showing it in a lot of movie theaters across America. And my local movie theater is getting this. So, hopefully, if everything works out, I'm going to go try and see that, because I really want to see that. That looks like a lot of fun. And I've never actually seen the original Anaconda by itself, actually. So it's going to be kind of like two worlds coming together, really. Going to go see Anaconda, I'm going to go see Rift Track. So hopefully, if everything works out, that'll be awesome. And if I do go see it, I will definitely do some type of brief review on here. So, but anyway, back to a movie mayhem. Kind of got off track for a little bit. Annabelle, I don't really want to see that movie because it really kind of feels like every other horror movie nowadays, which is either a haunted house, paranormal activity, or just jump scares, cheap jump scares. I just don't like those type of movies. And G actually said in the movie Mayhem episode, like, we need another great slasher, and like, I could not agree more with that. Like, I'm agreeing with G so hard on that one. Because we really do need another good slasher movie. And no one's really given us that. Not, at least not to an original slasher movie. You know what I mean? Like, we have, some good sequels like Curse of Chucky and stuff like that. But when it comes to actually original, when it comes to creating a whole new franchise, we really haven't gotten those yet. I mean, I guess the closest we could get is like Saw, but nah. I mean, yeah, we really do need another great slasher. Hopefully soon we'll get that. But anyway, Movie Mayhem, it's a great, great show. If you haven't heard it, definitely check it out. The two of them have great chemistry, and it really does motivate me to make my podcast even better, because it kind of rejuvenates me, it kind of inspires me, it motivates me to be the best I can be. And those two are really great together, And it kind of makes me wish I had another person to kind of talk with, because, on my podcast, it's just by myself. I'm a one-man army on here, and I think the chemistry between those two is what makes their show so entertaining. That's not to say my show isn't entertaining. I hope my show's good. I really do hope that my show is great. I hope that you all enjoy listening to it. But, yeah, Movie Mayhem is awesome, awesome, awesome. If you haven't heard it, definitely check it out. Those two are awesome. I consider them my very best friends. So if you haven't heard it, check it out. It is awesome. And so now it's time to shoot the shuffle. At number 1, Eat the Rich by Motorhead from Rock and Roll. And Motorhead is sort of like the heavy metal AC/DC, just kind of, they do kind of make the same album over and over again. But Motorhead are actually really good at that. And this song from '87, I believe, is just pretty good. Number 2, God Gave Me Everything by Mick Jagger from Goddess in the Doorway. And this one it's okay. And honestly, Mick Jagger's solo career is very hit and miss. Mostly miss. I think I like his Rolling Stone stuff a lot better. And it's not like Keith Richards' solo album, Talk Is Cheap, back in 88, 89. Whenever that came out. I think it was 88. But Keith Richards' solo stuff is pretty good. And the thing that really bothers me about classic rock bands is that they don't really make a lot of albums anymore, Like, Rolling Stone's last album was, like, nearly 10 years ago. They haven't made another one since. And it seems like a lot of people just love to, I don't know, there's a lot of classic rock bands, really have a long wait for new albums. Like, it took, like, Joan Jett, 7, 8 album, 7, 8 years or so, 6 or 7 years to make another album, which was great. And it took Van Halen like 12 years to make another album. So it just seems like there's a ton of delay for classic rock bands and artists to make new albums. And the new albums are awesome, but I just don't like waiting. I'm not a very patient guy, but Anyway, back on topic. This song is okay. Number 3, The Righteous and the Wicked by Red Hot Chili Peppers from Blood, Sex, Sugar Magic. This album is awesome, and this song is pretty good. It sort of has kind of like a mid-tempo set to it. Number 4, Mob Scene by Marilyn Manson from the Golden Age of Grotesque. This one is pretty good as well, you know. It just, it kind of has a KMFDM sound to it, like I said in the Marilyn Manson retrospective just a few days ago. But overall, it's pretty good. Number 5, Reunited by Graham Revell from Bride of Chucky. And this song is the song that's playing when Tiffany is doing her striptease in Bride of Chucky, which in itself is an awesome scene, of course, for obvious reasons. But the music makes it even better as well. Number 6, Angry Chair by Alice in Chains from Dirt. This one is a pretty solid song from Alice in Chains. I really like Alice in Chains. They're a pretty good alternative rock group. Number 7, Rooster by Alice in Chains from Dirt. Kind of an odd thing to come after the last song, but this song is far better than Angry Chair. It's a very slow, brooding kind of ballad, and it's really, really good. Number 8, Beat on the Brat by the Ramones from Ramones. This one is a pretty solid punk song from the Ramones. Number 9, The Oath by Kiss from Music from the Elder. This is an okay song from Kiss's 81 album. It's not great, but it's not that terrible either. It's one of the more tolerable songs on here. And finally, number 10, Fly Away by Lenny Kravitz from 5. And this one is a pretty good song, you know. Lenny Kravitz is a really good artist that I like. And his music is kind of like, you know, that kind of funk rock, you know, and it's really good. So now it's time for the main event. It's time to talk about Alice Cooper. So the first Alice Cooper album we're going to be discussing is Pretty's For You. And this is a weird album. Like, who'd have thought Alice Cooper's first album was weird? But it has a very kind of psychedelic kind of sound to it, you know. And a lot of the songs are about a minute and a half or so. Like, it's not a very long album. And it was done in 1969, so it pretty much is kind of like a what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like the times, I guess you could say, kind of like a product of the times. That's what I'm looking for, you know. And it's just not very good. It's not very memorable, you know. It's just not. It just feels really weird to listen to it. And there's also an early version of Elected on there called Reflected, and that's pretty cool. And Levity Ball is interesting to listen to. But other than those two, there's not a whole lot to really remember about this album. It is just kind of forgettable and just kind of weird. I mean, if you want to, if you're curious as to how Alice Cooper sounded back in 1969, back when he was starting out, then I'd say just listen to those two songs, Levity Ball and Reflected. Other than that, I really don't recommend the album. So now we move on to Easy Action. And this one is a little bit better than Praise For You. It kind of still has that kind of psychedelic sound going for it. And there's a song on there called Refrigerator Heaven, which is about a minute and 55 seconds, but it's still pretty cool, and it's probably the best track off that album. But basically, if you've heard Praise For You, then you basically heard this album as well, because it's basically the same thing, you know. And it's just not very memorable. So now we move on to Love It to Death. And this one is far, far better. And this was really like the first really good Alice Cooper album, you know. And it has the song I'm 18, which is really great. And the funny thing about that song is that there's actually an alternate version that exists somewhere. And it exists as like a music video. It's much longer. It's about 5.5 minutes. And it's a lot more psychedelic and more kind of more noise rock in some ways, because near the end it gets really noisy, you know, not very structured really, but I really like that version of the song. I kind of like that version more than the normal version. And there's also some other good songs on that album. You know, stuff like Caught in a Dream, that's pretty good. Is in My Body is okay. Black Juju is great. That's 9 minutes long. So that might be the longest Alice Cooper song. I'm not sure. I could be wrong on that. But I'm pretty sure it's the longest one that he's done. And Hallowed Be My Name, that's okay. And Ballad of Dwight Frye, that's pretty awesome. Now, it kind of reminds me of something that would later be on, like Welcome to My Nightmare, in terms of lyrically, anyway. And it also has some pretty solid production, you know. So overall, Love It to Death is probably the first really good Alice Cooper album. It really improves on everything that the first two albums were doing, and it's pretty good. And so now we move on to Killer. And this is a great, great album. You have Under My Wheels, which is a great, great song. Then we have Be My Lover, which is great. Then we have Halo of Flies, which is 8 minutes. And it's very progressive rock. And just kind of very progressive rock, you know. And like, it's pretty interesting to listen to. And Dead Babies is pretty good as well. It has a killer bass line, as well as killer. Like, both Dead Babies and Killer has a killer bass line, if you excuse the pun. And then there's only 8 songs on here, so it's a bit short. And there's really not too much to say about it. It's a pretty good album, so definitely check it out. So now we move on to School's Out. And this was like the big album. You know, I think this was like the first really big album in Alice Cooper, you know, territory, because obviously it has the big hit School's Out. And that's a great classic rock song. And we also have a song called Gutter Cat versus the Jets. And that's a really good one as well. And it has a great bass line as well, you know. I mean, but other than those two, there's not a whole lot special in this album. You have like School's Out, but that's about it. You know, so there's not a lot to talk about with this album. You know, just kind of forgettable. It's still an okay album. So then we move on to $1 Billion Babies. And then this was the really big album, because this was like, I think it debuted at like number 1, possibly. I really don't know. I heard that it did it really well. And we have a great intro, Hello Hooray. And that's a good one. Very kind of theatrical in its own sense. And then we have a song called Raped and Freezing. And that's what I like about Alice Cooper. The fact that a lot of his songs have kind of a unique sense of humor to them. You know, like stuff like Marilyn Manson, you know, like Marilyn Manson's stuff he kind of takes himself a bit too seriously for his own good. And that's really not the case with Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper has a very kind of wicked sense of humor about himself and kind of his image and stuff like that. So it's kind of a very dark comedy, Then we have Elected, which is a reworked version of Reflected off of Praise for You, and this is far better than that one. And then we have the title track, which actually has Donovan on co-lead vocals, and that's pretty good as well. Then we have Sick Things, and that's pretty good. And I Love the Dead. That's a great song. Like a really, really great song. It's pretty much about what you think it's about. And that's a really great song. So overall, Billion Dollar Babies is a great album. At the time, probably the best that they had done. And it's probably one of Alice Cooper's top 5 best albums. It's just really, really good. So after that, we get Muscle of Love. And, this is one of those albums where it kind of feels a bit too forced. It really doesn't feel special. It's one of those albums that you kind of forget about. It's just a kind of forgettable album because I don't really think it had a lot of hits. I think the closest it had to having a hit was the song Teenage Limit 74. And again, but then again, it was it's just it's pretty much what the song says it is. It's just a teenage song, Really nothing special or original there. And then Man with the Golden Gun, that's okay. And I think that was originally supposed to be like a James Bond theme, but it ended up never doing it. But overall, Muscle Love, it just isn't very good. It really does kind of seem like the band is kind of tired at this point. And this was actually the last Alice Cooper band album. Because before Welcome to My Nightmare, Alice Cooper was a band, not a solo artist. So this was the final album to feature the band. And it wasn't really a good album to kind of end out on. It probably should have ended out with Billion Dollar Babies, then Alice went solo, but I don't know, that's just me. So speaking of solo, we move on to Welcome to My Nightmare. And this one is an amazing album. Just awesome album. And I've always loved concept albums. I've always loved rock operas. I've always loved the fact that you could tell a story through music. You know what I mean? And it's just, I really like stuff like that. And Welcome to My Nightmare centers around a young boy or a man named Steven. And he pretty much suffers a nightmare. And Vincent Price is on the album, and that's really cool. Specifically on Devil's Food. Devil's Food is a very brief track. And for the last minute or so, it has Vincent Price reciting all this weird dialogue. And it's pretty cool. Then we have The Black Widow, which is awesome. It's an awesome song. And then Some Folks is it's kind of a weird song. I don't know exactly which genre to I don't know which genre to really put it under, but it's still pretty fun. Kind of a weird album, kind of a weird song in itself. And then we have Only Women Bleed, which is a great ballad. It does kind of go on for a bit too long. It reaches about 6 minutes or so. And then we have Cold Ethel, which sort of kind of centers around the same topic as I Love the Dead. And that's a pretty cool song. And then we have Years Ago, which I really, really love. It kind of has like a creepy carnival kind of feel to the music. I don't know how to explain it. It just kind of has that kind of creepy vibe. And then we have The Awakening, which is a great, great song. And I kind of wish that this was a bit more instrumental. And I kind of wish it went on for a bit longer because the music in here is just epic. It's just epic. If you haven't heard that song, that particular song, definitely check it out because it is just amazing. So overall, Welcome to My Nightmare is an awesome album. If you haven't heard it, definitely check it out because I'd say it's probably Alice Cooper's best album. Maybe, I really don't know. It's just pretty good. So then we move on to Alice Cooper Goes to Hell. And this one is another concept album. And it's more about the Alice Cooper character going to hell and just kind of seeing what happens down there. And it's not a very good album. Considering that it came right after Welcome to My Nightmare, it's pretty much a big step backwards. You know, like, Go to Hell, the title track, Go to Hell, that's a really good song. And I Never Cry is a good ballad. And it's kind of similar to Only Women Bleed in terms of music. But other than those two, there's really not a lot of great things on this album. And one thing I like about this is that disco symbolizes hell. I always thought that was pretty funny, you know. But other than that, it's not a very memorable album, you know. So I'd probably say skip it. So then we move on to Lace and Whiskey. And this one, it's a little bit better than Goes to Hell. Like, it has yet another ballad on there called You and Me, which Frank Sinatra actually covered years and years later. So that's pretty cool. And it also has a really great opening track called It's Hot Tonight, which is highly underrated. That's a great, great song. So that's really underrated. If you haven't heard it, definitely check it out. Other than that, not a whole lot to like about this album. It kind of goes for sort of a softer sound than that. So it's just not very good. I wouldn't say it's not very good, but it's just not to my taste. And so then we have From the Inside. And in terms of lyrics, this is probably his best album. Lyrically, it's his best album. Musically, it's sort of hit and miss, you know. Because I think the entire album was co-written with Bernie Taupin, who writes a lot with Elton John, and so it kind of has sort of an Elton John feel to it, you know, both musically and a little bit lyrically. And the title track is great as well. How You Gonna See Me Now is okay. It's an okay ballad. Serious is a pretty good rock song. Million Billy is pretty good. Nurse Rosetta is a great one. It's a really, really great one. So overall, and it's a concept album about being in a sanitarium. And it's really, really cool, you know. So, yeah, other than that, this is a really solid album. I'd say it was his best since Welcome to My Nightmare. So then we have Flush the Fashion. And this one, very forgettable. Like, it has a very new wave sound to it. You know, like, Clones Were All, that's a very new wavy song, you know, but that song's great. The other songs on the album, not so much. It's more forgettable than anything else. And it's not very, there's not a lot of highlights on this album. So, it's really not a lot to talk about, because it's just kind of forgettable at best. So we're going to move on to Special Forces. And this one, again, and a lot of his early 80s stuff is just kind of forgettable. So I might just briefly go over them. But other than that, it's just not that great. Who Do You Think We Are? That's the only good song on this album. I think that's a pretty interesting song. Other than that, not a whole lot to talk about. It's more new wavy again. It's just not that great. Then we have Zipper Catches Skin. And once again, just kind of forgettable. You know, stuff like Tag, You're It, and I'm the Future. Those are okay songs. Not great, but not terrible either. Just not that great, you know. Just really, really forgettable. You know, just not that great. So then we go on to Dada. And this is where things kind of change. Because this isn't a great album either. But it's very insane. It really is very insane. Like, the opening track is just pretty weird. And just Dada is just an insane album. You know, there's not a very clear story going on there. Like, the way I see it, it's kind of like about a guy with multiple personalities. And the song Formerly Warmer is pretty good. But other than that, there's not a lot of great songs on there. They're just kind of crazy and weird. And not a lot of structure to them. So, yeah, this is an album that I would probably skip. Or at least listen to it once. Because it is worth checking out just for the sheer insanity of it. So, now we move on to Constrictor. And, Constrictor is a much better album. It's probably his best album since From the Inside. Just a really good album, you know. It's a lot more hair metal-esque than it's very hair metal-ish, you know. Like Teenage Frankenstein, that's a really good song. And He's Back, The Man Behind the Mask, that's a really good one. And just the entire album is very good. It has some great guitar work, so if you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. There's not a whole lot to say about that album, but I definitely recommend it. It's pretty good. So then we move on to Raise Your Fist and Yell. And this one, I love this album. I really, really love this album. It's pretty underrated, honestly, you know. And again, it's much more hair metal. And this is an album that kind of gets lost in the shuffle when it comes to Alice Cooper albums, because not a lot of people really know about it as much as some of his other albums that came after it. But Raise Your Fist and Yell is great, you know. Give the Radio Back's pretty good. Freedom is great as well. Prince of Darkness, awesome. Step on You is a great, great one. Roses on White Lace, that's a great closing song. And the bottom line is the fact that the album is underrated. It really is underrated. I don't know why this album doesn't get more attention, because it's just a great album. I'd say it's probably my favorite Alice Cooper album. It's just so great, you know. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out, because it's just, I don't know quite how to describe it. It's sort of like it was kind of inspired by all the slasher movies of the mid '80s and stuff like that, you know. Because it's just really, really good. It's pretty much Alice Cooper being Alice Cooper. And that's my favorite Alice Cooper album, so definitely check it out. I highly, highly recommend it. So now we move on to Trash. And this album is, it's kind of more commercial than his previous albums. It kind of felt like one of those commercialized albums, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But on this one, it doesn't really work. Like House of Fire, that was co-written with Joan Jett, but at the same time, it feels like Joan Jett should be singing the song rather than Alice Cooper. It feels more like a Joan Jett song than an Alice Cooper song. And then we have stuff like Only My Heart Talking, which I think features Steven Tyler on vocals, and that's an okay. That's more forgettable than anything else. And we also have Poison, which was like the big hit, and like that's an okay song. Like it's not as great as people say it is, but it's pretty good. And then we have stuff like Trash and Bed of Nails, and those are pretty good. Speaking of Bed of Nails and Trash, the way I first heard of Alice Cooper was in a compilation called A Nice Nightmare, and I have no idea if anybody even knows what that is, but it was like some type of compilation album that I'm pretty sure is now out of print. But that's how I first heard of Alice Cooper. I got that compilation. And songs from Trash, Hey Stupid, and This Maniac, The Last Temptation. That songs from those three albums. So anyway, that was just a quick story about how I first heard of Alice Cooper. But anyway, overall, Trash is just, it's an okay album. It's a bit too commercialized for my taste. It kind of feels more like just being more of a commercial album rather than an actual album. And it does kind of suffer in the process. But I really don't think it's really that bad. You know, it has a few good songs on it. But other than that, I'd probably listen to it. So now we move on to Hey Stupid. And this is one of my favorite Alice Cooper albums. So this one is really great. It's a huge improvement upon Trash, which is kind of funny because it's very obvious that it's trying really hard to capitalize on the success of Trash. Because a few of the songs have a very similar sound to Trash. But for some reason, this album works and that one doesn't. But the title track, Hey Stupid, that's a good one. Love's a Lily Gun is a good ballad. Snake Bite, Burning Our Bed, Might As Well Be on Mars. Might As Well Be on Mars is a great one. Just a really great one. I love the guitar solo at the end. That's amazing. Feed My Frankenstein is great as well. Little by Little, great underrated track. Wind Up Toy, the final song, which features Steven from Welcome to My Nightmare. That's a really good one. And overall, it felt like a real Alice Cooper album again. You know, it's a lot better than Trash, and it's just a really great album. So if you haven't listened to it, definitely check it out because it's great. So then we move on to The Last Temptation. And this was the first Alice Cooper album I ever heard, so I kind of have a bit of kind of sentimental quality to it. And this one it's kind of a basic hard rock, heavy metal sound. You know, there's really no like hair metal stuff like that, like on Hey Stupid or Trash or anything like that. It's more like just like a standard hard rock album. And it kind of acts like a prequel to Welcome to My Nightmare because it centers around Steven as a young boy who comes face to face with the showman, and it's implied that the showman might be the devil. It's never explicitly stated, but it's kind of obvious. And again, like the album title suggests, he kind of tempts him with all this stuff that he could have, you know, like he tempts him, like he pretty much shows Steven how crappy his life would be if he said no. Like Lost in America and Bad Place Alone, he kind of says how like he would be like a bum and stuff like that, and then he shows him what he could have. Like You're My Temptation, he tempts him with a woman who I think is named Mercy. I'm not sure. They don't really make it very clear, but I think her name is Mercy. And overall, the album is really great. If you're a religious nut, either really religious or anti-religious, you might not like this album because while they don't nail it on the head, it's obvious that it's a very kind of Christian kind of album. Like, it doesn't go like to Christian music or gospel music or anything like that. It just kind of has that theme of Christianity and stuff like that, you know. So anyway, the Last Temptation is just a really, really good album. So then we waited a really long time for a new Alice Cooper album. Because Last Temptation was made in 94. And by the time we got a new Alice Cooper album, it was 2000. So we did wait a really long time. But the wait was worth it, because in 2000 we got Brutal Planet. And that's a really good album. Pretty much every song on that album is great. And it has a very industrial metal kind of vibe to it, which isn't really that surprising. And I think a lot of bands were really trying that sound back then as well. But Wicked Young Man is great as well. Sanctuary is great. Blow Me a Kiss is very good. Pick Up the Bones is kind of a great industrial metal kind of song. Pessimistic is great as well. Gimme, which is a song from the point of view of the devil, is great. It's the little things. Pretty much every song on there is great. And a lot of people know that I love industrial metal, so I really, really love that one. I really just love Brutal Planet. And then a year later, we get Dragon Town. And this one was pretty much a sequel, more or less, to Brutal Planet. Because I think Alice said like Dragon Town was supposed to be like the worst town on Brutal Planet or something like that. And this album, although I like it, it does kind of feel like some of these songs were left off of Brutal Planet. Like they are outtakes of it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just the way I kind of get to it, you know. And stuff like Sister Sarah, that's pretty good. And Disgraceland is pretty good. Dragon Town is pretty good. Every Woman Has a Name is pretty good. Fantasy Man, The Centennial. A lot of those are really great, you know. So overall, that album is pretty good. Then we move on to The Eyes of Alice Cooper. And I think this was like the second Alice Cooper album that I had listened to. And I really, really like this album. It goes back to being kind of that raw garage rock kind of sound of the 70s. It's really good. It really does that retro sound very good. It does it very well. And between high school and old school, that's great. Man of the Year is great. Detroit City is great. This House is Haunted is a really great ballad. Love Should Never Feel This Way is great. Backyard Brawl is great. It's a great fighting song. You know what I mean? You know, you can play like Mortal Kombat or just like a WWE game. You know, like you can put that song on in the background and you'll just be awesome at it, you know. So yeah, The Eyes of Alice Cooper is very good. So then a couple years passes and we move on to Dirty Diamonds. And this album, it's okay at best. Like, it's not that great. And honestly, when I first heard it, I wasn't a huge fan of it. Like, it still retains that garage rock sound, but for whatever reason, it didn't really translate that well to this album. There's a few good songs on there, like Run Down the Devil is pretty good, and the title track is great. And 6 Hours is also pretty good. Good driving song. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to remember about this album, you know. So overall, Dirty Diamonds is an okay album. So then we move on to Along Came a Spider. And this was an album that I bought like a couple weeks after it came out. Because this was the first Alice Cooper album that I was really looking forward to. This was one that I was really, really hyped for. And I got it, and it really did not disappoint me. It was really good. The production of the album is kind of lacking in some ways, but for the most part, it's pretty good. And it's a concept album once again, and the story is about a new character, a serial killer named Spider, who chops off the legs of his victims in order to create like a super spider. And it's just a really great album. Like Vengeance Is Mine, which has Slash on the lead guitar. That's a great one. And Catch Me If You Can, In Touch With Your Feminine Side, Wrapped in Silk. Stuff like that is just really, really great. It's pretty much a solid hard rock, heavy metal album. I'd probably say it's like his heaviest album, I'd say. So, now we move on to his latest album. It's Welcome to My Nightmare. And it's the sequel to Welcome to My Nightmare. And this one, I was really looking forward to. But I was also kind of skeptical as well. Because I'm like, I'm not even sure if Welcome to My Nightmare really needs a sequel. But I was really proven wrong, because this album is pretty good. And I think what I like the most about this album is the fact that pretty much every song on here is practically a different genre. Like I Am Made of You, which is the first track. It uses the piano thing from Steven on Welcome to My Nightmare, which is pretty interesting. But it also has Alice Cooper using the auto-tune, which is just kind of weird to hear. Then we have Caffeine, which is like pretty much like I could honestly see this song being in something like Rocky Horror. It reminds me of something out of Rocky Horror Picture Show. I could see people like Riff Raff, Columbia, people like that kind of just jam into the song in Dr. Frankenfurter's Castle. Then we have A Runaway Train, which is pretty good. Then we have Last Man on Earth, which is amazing. And it's kind of like some folks in regard to the fact that I really don't know what genre to really put it under. It's just kind of a weird song. People who have heard the song probably know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't heard it, definitely check that song out, because it's pretty interesting. And then we have The Congregation, which is a very Beatles-esque song. And we have I'll Bite Your Face Off, which is kind of like an early Rolling Stones song. We have Ghouls Gone Wild, which is like a Beach Boys kind of thing. And we have What Baby Wants, which is kind of like pop rock, which has Kesha. And her parts, it's okay. I'm not a huge fan of the pop world nowadays, but it's pretty interesting to listen to. And then we have the Under Tour, which pretty much is a recap of both Welcome to My Nightmare and Welcome to My Nightmare. And those are pretty good. You get to hear some really interesting versions of songs from both this album and that album. So overall, Welcome to My Nightmare, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Not that I thought it was going to be like bad, but I was like, I'm really hoping I don't get disappointed by this. It didn't disappoint me. I thought it was pretty good. So that's it for the Alice Cooper retrospective. Overall, I think Alice Cooper is a great artist, great musical artist. Sometimes he has great albums, sometimes he has not so great albums, but overall, I think he's a great artist. And if it wasn't for Alice Cooper, then people like Kiss, Slipknot, Marilyn Manson, Rob Zombie, none of them would be there. None of them would be here if it wasn't for Alice Cooper. So, Alice Cooper is awesome. And thank you for listening to this episode. And I'll see you tomorrow for some more MetalWeen.